is Billy Tarasio with the Modern Divorce Podcast. So excited today for our topic and our guest. Really, we could talk for hours and hours, but we're going to be talking about a topic that you all are very, very interested in: toxic relationships and narcissistic relationships, finding out if you're in one, figuring out if you can set boundaries and fix them, and then navigating a co-parenting relationship after they're over. This is something that many of our listeners are dealing with, and we have an expert here today with us, Dr. Heidi Brocke. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited. This is really my first getting to speak to the divorcing community. So that's
really
exciting. I mean,
wow.
I'm sure that other people, other podcasts, but like, that's exactly your, where you're at. And I work with a ton of people that are going through divorce. So this has had me kind of excited all week.
Fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. Okay. So then if you're not typically talking to the divorced community, is it just more generally to the relationship community, or who do you usually talk to?
Well, I just meant I've never been on an attorney's podcast before.
Got it.
So basically, I call myself a toxic relationship awareness and healing expert or specialist or whatever you want to call it. Where my training came from, actually came from experience. My doctor title is from 25 years in chiropractic, which I loved, and I was fine at it. But a few years ago, I got, this is going to sound terrible. I felt like I could adjust people in the dark with my eyes shut.
Yeah.
And I was reaching that stage. Everybody reaches that in their career where you're like, okay, I got to do something else, or I'm going to, so I started coaching, and I started coaching in making yourself a priority. Mm-hmm. And, because I knew from my past, I had not been in a position that I could be priority. And slowly, as people were coming to me for this priority coaching, I accidentally started using examples from my past. And I realized that most of the people that were coming to me for learning how to make themselves a priority had come out of relationships very similar to my former marriage. And so I just dragging my feet, because I didn't talk about it when I was in it. I didn't talk about it for 4 years after I was out of it. And so when I had a business coach that said, yes, that's what you're coaching in. And I was like, yeah, I definitely don't think that's what I'm coaching in. But I started just, throwing some stuff out there, and people wanted this information. So this is a 6-year business now. And I was able to completely retire from healthcare about 1.5 years ago. And so I actually coach people in this full time now.
Okay. So you are a specialist and an expert in toxic relationships and narcissism. Is that right?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's start with, what is a toxic relationship? How do you define that?
Okay. So I chose the word toxic 6 years ago, before toxic was everywhere on every app that you open on your phone, right? And the reason I chose toxic is not a diagnosis. Right. Toxic it's a blanket phrase. Yeah. And it's a blanket phrase that I use because basically the definition is a toxic relationship is any relationship in the status that it's in that may be unhealthy for you mentally, physically, or emotionally. And of course, you and I, when we think of toxic relationship, we probably immediately think of the intimate relationship or the marriage relationship or the spousal relationship. Mm-hmm. But when you think about toxic relationships, we have friendships, we have family circles, we have social circles, we have coworker situations. Mm-hmm. And so the toxic relationship is all of those. Mm-hmm. And when I started this, I really thought I was going to help ladies get out of emotionally abusive relationships. And now I have worked with hundreds of people on every different type of relationship. So that was a surprise to me, except what's not a surprise to me is the toxic personality, regardless of the extremity, the extremeness of the toxicity. They're all motivated by the same thing. So it doesn't really matter what the dynamic of the relationship is, because how I teach people to handle it and to get out of it is the same regardless of which type of relationship it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So many questions, but let's start with your marriage. the inspiration for all of this? Like, what did that look like?
So I grew up in a little tiny dairy community in the middle of Montana. And it was a community small enough that everybody went to the same church and everybody went to the same school. And I grew up in this little community where everybody knew everybody and everybody protected everybody. And then I decided to leave that little community and go out into the world and pursue my career, right? Mm-hmm. And I would have never known there was people like this out there. And I thought everybody in the world was like everybody I grew up with. And so it really blindsided me. I met my former husband while I was in grad school. Mm-hmm. And there was red flags the first day.
Really?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. 100% looking back, there was. And it was kind of, I hate using this word, but I'm going to use it because your listeners know exactly what I'm saying. I was a people pleaser. You know, I went into healthcare because I'm a fixer, I'm a helper, I'm a supporter, you know, I'm a conflict avoider, I'm a peacekeeper. I'm the type of personality that gets my fulfillment out of life with helping and making other people feel better. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to be the bad person. I don't want to hurt feelings. So a constant push of, hey, do you want to go out with me? And I said no 3 times. By the third ask, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be the bad person. Right. And so long story short, first date, second date, ta-da, I'm married, ta-da, I have a kid, you know, because and there was a lot of steps along the way. I didn't want to marry him. I told my dad I didn't want to marry him. My dad told him no. It was this weird thing that I had never, ever experienced before in my life. But there was a strange feeling for me to make sure I kept him happy, regardless of how everybody else in my life that supported me felt about it. And, you know, before I knew it, we had a business together. We had 2 kids, we had property, we had all of this stuff. And by that time, he had girlfriends. I was completely stuck. I felt like I was stuck. I was financially stuck. I was emotionally stuck. I was stuck. And it continued to get worse. And I'll kind of get into this a little bit later when I say it continued to get worse. I started losing myself. I started losing my voice. By the time I actually left, I don't think I even looked up. You know, I walked with my head down. I never laughed. I never talked. I had no friends. I didn't keep in communication with my family because all of the stuff that made me caused conflict with him. So I would quit doing everything in order to keep him happy. So I had this little world around me where all I did was, okay, it's Tuesday. My goal for Tuesday is to get through Tuesday. Wow. Okay. And then when you get up Wednesday morning, your goal is to get through Wednesday. So when you're in these type of relationships, you don't really have time to pay attention to what do I want out of my life? What makes me happy? Because you constantly have to have your attention on them and really try to stay one step ahead of them to predict their behavior. So basically I woke up one morning, looked in the mirror. I had blonde hair because 3 weeks after we got married, he told me he wished he married a blonde. So for 12 years of my marriage, my hair kept getting lighter. I kept trying to stay skinny so he wouldn't have a girlfriend. And I remember looking there just going, I have no idea who you are at all. And at that point I had probably a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old daughter. And I made the decision that I needed to file for divorce. So I filed for divorce, and it was a year-long struggle, because when you leave these relationships, it's not about the relationship, it's about their control over you.
Yeah.
And so I got the divorce. I was happy as a clam for one day.
What?
Because I was so excited I was divorced.
Yeah.
But now you're gonna look at me when I say this and you're gonna go, oh my gosh, what was the matter with you? Okay. I was scared. I was very scared. I was very frightened of him. Mm-hmm. So he finally said, okay, you want a divorce? I'm writing the divorce papers and we are not hiring an attorney.
Okay.
And I was so desperate to get out. I was like, do it. Well, he refused to allow us to divide the business. He said 50-50, but refused to put a parenting plan in place. So there was nothing to hold anybody accountable. Wouldn't, divide any of the property. So here I am divorced, and I am seeing and working with him every single day.
Yeah.
We had our own houses, but they were on the same property.
What?
And so people that listen to my podcast, they will hear me talk about the day I ran away.
Mm.
And I don't get into, obviously everybody's story like this is ridiculous, but the day I ran away, I had already actually been divorced for almost 2 years the day I ran away. And it was so bad after I got divorced that, I mean, it almost took me out. And so when I left, I actually left my practice. I signed my practice over to him. I signed the property over to him. And I initially had to leave my kids in order to get away from him. And part of that was, I know it sounds awful, and it looked awful from the outside because she just like left her kids.
Well, and I'm sure his narrative was
Yeah.
brutal.
Yes. His narrative was that we weren't even divorced, and I just floozied out and ran away,
You lost your mind, and here he was holding it all together.
Yeah. And so really
supportive.
Yeah. What really motivated me to leave, and this sounds ridiculous, is the day I looked in the mirror and I was blonde and didn't recognize myself. I thought, this is the example that my daughters have of a relationship. And this is the example that my daughters have of a mom.
Yeah.
And their upbringing was not good either. So it wasn't like it was just focused on me. So I left, I moved 4 hours south. He kept my kids from me for 5 years. I didn't see them or talk to them for 5 years. And it was, it sounds terrible. It was the worst, absolute worst time in my life. And at the same time, I was forced to rediscover myself during that time because I had nothing. When you're in a toxic relationship, your identity is based on the people around you. When you're with your spouse, you're a spouse. When you're with your kids, you're a mom. When you're at work, you're an employee. When you're with your friends, you're a friend. And so when you get dumped into a room by yourself after coming out of something like this, nobody's in the room telling you what label you have right now. And when you've given up everything about yourself. And so I spent a good 3.5 years just figuring out what I liked. I had to I couldn't even order off of a menu when I left that relationship. And it wasn't necessarily because he was telling me what to order. It was because when I would order something, he would say, "Now, how come you're having chicken?" Or, "Don't you think that's too expensive?" And the toxic personality does that. So you start second guessing your decisions. Because if you can't decide if you're having chicken or steak, you are definitely not going to make the decision to leave them. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but that's when I started really doing the research behind. And this is if you guys don't remember anything else I say on this podcast, I started doing the research behind on what motivated his behavior. Because all you can do when you're in a toxic relationship is he said this, or she said that, or they did this, or, and you're trained to try to stay one step ahead so you can protect yourself. I never, ever took the time to go, what is motivating him to behave like this? And so that is now what I have developed into the program that I teach and the program that I use to coach. When you're standing in the center of a toxic relationship, an abusive relationship, you can't see it. Logically, this relationship is not good for you, but as soon as emotions get involved, it clouds your logic. So what I do different than, say, a therapist or a counselor, I do a ton of education because people need to understand what their situation really is for them to feel powerful enough to remove themselves. Because if they don't understand it, they'll be just like me. They'll be divorced and things will continue the same.
Okay. Lots there to unpack. One of the things that I think you have said that is worth reiterating and expanding on is the divorce. The legal divorce is not the thing. It's not. It sometimes, the legal divorce and what you're going through in terms of dividing your children, dividing your property, getting money, healing your relationship, breaking up, separating yourself from this other person, like they don't always line up. you want them to line up, but for you, they did not line up at all.
Mm-mm.
So
And I used to regret that because when I moved, I ended up moving with $50,000 in debt because I had nothing. I didn't have a job, and he had taken credit cards out in my name. So for a while, I regretted not being strong enough to just continue the fight and continue, to try and stand up for myself. But now, when I work with people as they're going through the divorce process, I sometimes am super thankful that that's how I did it. Because
that you just said that. I hate that. I hate
Yeah.
that because I don't want I don't want anyone listening to this to think that that is okay. And me as a lawyer, I'm thinking like, you have rights. We can advocate for you. It doesn't have to be that way.
And now, I have worked with some people that are just so tired and so exhausted that they said, you know what, I'm just gonna let him have the kids. Okay. And I will say, you can do that. Mm-hmm. But I know enough now that I'm not going to let you do that unless it's very last resort. Mm-hmm. Because I have learned the divorce process, obviously not as well as you, but I have learned the divorce process enough that now I am able to talk people off of that ledge. Because I don't want anybody to have to do what I did when I know that there's a way. Yeah. The toxic relationship is exhausting. It's work. It's uphill all the time. The divorce process with the toxic person is exhausting. It's uphill all the time. And I think that the thing that people have to remember is the reason the divorce process is such a uphill battle is because it's not about the relationship at all. If we go back to what drives the toxic personality, this right here is the basis of what I teach. Regardless of the level of extremeness of toxicity, what drives the toxic personality is insecurity in themselves. Okay. So if we have listeners right now that are in bad situations, this is what I want you to learn. Okay. They are insecure in themselves. They will never admit that they're insecure in themselves. Okay. When we feel most secure in our life, you and I, Billy, it's when our jobs are going well. We've been at the gym 3 times this week. We've got a great group of friends. Our kids are doing well in school. We've lost 5 pounds. We look great in the dress. It's the things we put into our own life that make us feel rewarded, make us feel proud, and make us feel secure in ourselves, right? Okay, the toxic personality cannot do that. It doesn't matter how much they put into their own life. They will never put enough into their own life in order to feel secure in themselves. So what a toxic person has to do is they have to strategically place people in their life that supply them with the things that make them feel secure. And I usually talk about 4 things. For them to feel secure every day, they need to feel control, they need to feel power, they need attention, and they need admiration. So they basically get up in the morning and they go, how am I going to feel secure today? And who in my life is going to make me feel that way? So when you have people that are filing for divorce, we've cut a lot of the strings of that control and power. So it shifts to now I only have the divorce process to control them with and the kids. Because we look at them, they don't show up for hearings, they don't turn in their paperwork, they don't. Okay, the whole reason for that is because they want to maintain the control, and they know if they stall the divorce process and they be difficult, they are still controlling you in a way. And the other thing that we get sucked into is, I always wondered, and everybody always asked me, why did you ever marry him? Why did you even date him? And honestly, I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea. And when I think about the majority of my clients, most of my clients are in a service-oriented industry. So we feel bad because we feel like we've picked these horrible people for us. And in reality, we are targets. Our type of personality is a target for a toxic person. Because if you were somebody who wanted to feel power and control and get attention, you would target the good, kind, caring, loving fixers, conflict avoiders, peacekeepers. So I attracted him. As soon as he knew that I had the personality that he could use to get what he needed, That's why he wouldn't take no for an answer when I didn't want to marry him and when I didn't want to go out with him and when, you know, and the 6 times I tried to leave him. It was that need for self-security. And then the other very, very complicated aspect to these relationships is toxic people are emotionally abusive. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't realize what emotional abuse is. I think they confuse it with verbal abuse, and they'll be like, yeah, he yells a lot and he calls names, but he does it every day, so it's really not that big a deal. Mm-hmm. You know, what emotional abuse is when somebody uses your emotions to get what they need. So if they can say or do something that makes you happy, that makes you sad, that makes you cry, that makes you upset, that makes you feel guilty, that makes you feel frustrated, if they can do something that elicits an emotional reaction, they feel in control of your emotions, which makes them feel secure. And Belly, you will get this. As soon as somebody files for a divorce, what's the first thing the toxic personality says to them? I can't believe you're breaking up our family.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so when they say I can't believe you're breaking up our family, they are trying to elicit the emotion of guilt.
Yes.
Because we don't like to feel guilty. And what's the fastest way to remedy the guilty feeling? To give them what they want. And so then we go, oh, you're right. I am breaking up the family. That's awful. Okay, fine. I'll just drop the divorce. You know, we are so programmed to react. I have, there's one of my podcast episodes is called The Stick Fetcher. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how this emotional abuse is a slow drip. When we teach a dog to fetch a stick, it's throw the stick, the dog doesn't go get it. You get the dog, you get the stick, you bring it back. But all of a sudden the dog realizes that if you runs and gets the stick and brings it back to you, he gets a pat on the head and, you know, an ear scratch. So when the emotional abusive person starts causing reactions out of us, we realize that that's what they're wanting. So we don't care how many sticks they throw. We don't care who's throwing the stick. They throw a stick, we go get it. So they say something, we react. They're nice on Tuesday, we're happy. They're mean on Wednesday, we're sad. They're, you know, and so our emotions are all over depending on what they want our emotion to be. You know, so as soon as you leave, we're so used to their giving them reactions that even through the divorce process or the breakup, we are so conditioned to react to keep them happy and keep conflict down, that we don't understand that we don't have to react to them, because if we don't answer that text, we're going to be in trouble. You know, and if we don't answer nicely, they're going to get mad. And that's basically a conditioned response that the emotional abuser has trained us to fall into.
Okay. One of the things that I struggle with this narrative is that what I am seeing is that you've probably got two imperfect, broken people mm-hmm. who get into a dynamic. Mm-hmm. And that dynamic is, you know, one person's getting their needs met by, you know, sort of exploiting, but certainly early on, they're probably not intending to exploit. They're just in their relationship pattern, whatever they've learned. And you've got the other partner who is not a boundary setter. And so the snowball effect is pretty massive. But it's hard for me I feel like there's always such a, you know, villain victim mm-hmm. in the relationship dynamic that you're talking about, that mm-hmm. that feels problematic to me.
Okay. So, you know, I don't like to use the word victim, mm-hmm. but definitely there is victims in abuse situations. So I get that. So I definitely will admit that I was one time a victim. I probably would have never called it that because I didn't know what I was in. It happened every day. I was so desensitized to it. Mm-hmm. But when you say it's two broken people that get into this dynamic, mm-hmm. I would actually disagree that they're broken. And, right. And the only reason I say that is because they're still both people. And I absolutely 100% know I was not broken before I met him. And I 100% know he has continued to be the same exact person. So it's two people that were created different and their personalities don't match. And the reason that is the goals in the relationship are different. But, when the beginning of any relationship is exciting,
Right.
You're learning new things, it's adventurous. Okay. So when you step into a relationship, you're looking for certain things. You're looking for companionship and partnership and to build a family together and, to grow into something that's bigger and stronger. Right. And so somewhere along the line in the beginning of the relationship, we say this or we insinuate this. And the toxic personality will say, oh, that's exactly what I want. Okay. Because if they said, the only reason I step into relationships is for security in myself.
Right.
We would go, thanks, but no thanks.
And they probably don't know that. They probably don't know why, this starts a long time ago for everybody.
Yes.
Yes. We
And
might be born a pleaser, or we might be born into a family that, where I don't know. I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if it's mental illness. I don't know if it's environmental, but I do know that we all get into patterns of behavior that is very difficult to break.
So when we get into this relationship and they say, that's exactly what I want, we go, great. And we head down this relationship road, assuming that our relationship goals are the same. Now, what you just said, this is my stance on exactly what you just said. And some people think that this is harsh, but when I follow it up with the rest of the point, it doesn't seem harsh. Whatever has caused the insecurity in this person is probably something that they're not proud of, or probably something they couldn't control. It might be an addiction. It might be a diagnosis. It might be a traumatic upbringing. Okay. At the end of the day, we don't care what is making them insecure because it doesn't make the relationship any healthier for you. And so, because a lot of us are fixers in these relationships, the minute we know they've had a traumatic upbringing, or the minute we know that they have a diagnosis, or the minute we know they have addiction, what do?
Make excuses.
And we feel so sorry for them. So when you're in an unhealthy situation, yes, it is sad that they've gotten to where they are, but they are also grown adults. So if they are having trouble with this insecurity, they're responsible to fix it. The problem is they would never know that. The toxic personality would never realize that, because their 100% drive is self-security. So they're just placing people in their life. So you could tell them that, but they would never see it, because they're wired completely different than us. We sit in relationships like this and go, how come they just can't be nice? How come they can't act normal? How come they say they love me, but their actions are so opposite of that? And the truth is, we keep looking for ourselves in them, and we are wired completely different. And my dad, I call my dad all the time, but the most impactful thing he ever told me was, you are never going to find inner peace until you accept people for who they are, not who you want them to be. And it really, we didn't have this conversation till I was already out of my former marriage, but it really shed a light on me understanding, because as I've watched him, I have been out of that marriage for almost 14 years. And he is the exact same person. He has repeated the cycle with every single person, and every single person has also run away from him, just like me and my daughters eventually did. So it's very validating to me.
Yeah.
That is absolutely who he is. It's not healthy for me. And I had to make a decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you find that women in your situation tend to repeat the same patterns in relationship?
Okay. I do find that, but that is exactly why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Because once you become desensitized to some of this behavior, you would see it as normal. If you grew up in an abusive household, chances are you're going to step into an abusive relationship, because it's completely normal. You would not know any different. Being in a toxic situation is like being in a room that stinks. when you step into the room that stinks, you smell it, but if you stay in the room, the smell goes away.
Yeah.
Right? Because your body is trying to take care of you, so it desensitizes your feelings so you can survive within that environment.
Absolutely.
And so what I decided that I absolutely decided I was going to be the person that I needed when I was in this emotionally abusive situation. And I also knew that if I didn't learn to spot these character traits or the red flags or the tactics, whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say I'm an educator, I teach 21 character traits of the toxic person. So when I work with people, we know that they are very aware how to spot these. So moving forward in their relationships and their friendships and their coworker situations, they first have to learn how to spot these people.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means it's probably not the best person for you to have in your inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I teach them how they can interact with these people without allowing these people to affect them.
It's a big deal because there's toxic people everywhere.
All over.
We cannot avoid them all, but we can
And
learn how to set boundaries and protect ourselves.
yes. And it seems like it sucks because first we go through this traumatic relationship and now we're the ones doing all this work while they're just out there doing the same thing they've always done. But I always tell people, what do you want your life to look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then I do a lot of self-discovery. You've lost yourself in this relationship. Let's get back to who you are and let's build on what you want in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think one of the hardest things is, yeah, we can learn the character traits, but until you really rediscover yourself, you are going to always worry that you can't trust other people. And the answer is, if you are solid in who you are and what your identity is and what you stand for, the only person that you eventually have to trust is yourself.
Yeah.
Because and trust yourself that you're going to start making the decisions that are best for you instead of making decisions based on what other people think or how it's going to affect somebody else or if you're going to be in trouble or if it's going to cause conflict.
Yeah. And
you know, I always tell people I used to walk into a room and worry that nobody was going to like me. That's how I came out of my former marriage. Now I walk into a room and I hope there's somebody in there I'm going to like.
Interesting.
You know, because I had to learn to protect myself because you're right. My personality is going to attract that type of person.
Okay. So let's talk about these 21 traits. I want to know what they are.
Okay. Well, I should say I do have, my website is coachingwithdrheidi.com. On the website, there's something called the toxicity profile analysis, and it's long. It's 106 questions. You'll get results that say your life has been mildly, moderately, or severely affected by the toxic traits of others. The results I get that come into me, in case somebody would book a call, I can see how many yeses they answer in each one of those character traits. And by me seeing those results, before I even talk to you on the phone, I know exactly what type of personality we're dealing with. So some of those traits, now remember, all of these traits are used so that the toxic person can feel control, power, attention, or admiration, so they feel secure. It's like a flow chart. The 21 character traits are down here. They use the 21 character traits to achieve those 4 things so they feel secure. Okay. And it's things like criticism. Toxic people feel better when other people are struggling. If I can make you feel bad, I feel better, which makes me feel secure. You know, they are not going to apologize. You might get an apology, but if you do, it's always going to have strings attached. You know, they want to reconcile after you filed for divorce, and they're going to take you on vacations, and they're going to do all this stuff, and they're going to help with the house cleaning, and they're going to, okay, the only reason that's coming out now is because they're feeling the loss of control over you. So you'll get apologies, but they're going to sound like, I'm sorry I got mad, but you pushed my buttons. Okay. And I'm sorry, but you is not an apology. That's making you take the blame for what they did. But we want to believe their words so much that we hang on the fact that, oh, they just said, I'm sorry, you know, and then there go our emotions all over again. Isolation is a red flag. It's one of the character traits. Anything that gives you emotional support, your family, your good friends, your hobbies, the things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
The toxic person is going to really try to push those things out of your life so that you are solely dependent on them for all your emotional needs. You know, they'll say, I don't like your family, or your family doesn't like me, so I'm not going home for the holidays. And we would rather have conflict with those that we know love us than have conflict with the toxic person. So we stop going to see our family. We stop making phone calls. We stop because we know that eventually they're going to be there. But right now, I can't have conflict with this person when I talk to you all the time. I quit every hobby I ever had because it took too much time, and it took, and really the hobbies, he wanted my attention. Attention is one of those 4 things. And when I was giving attention to something, especially if it made me happy, that really wasn't going to work out for him. And he would just be super difficult about my hobbies until finally I'm like, oh my gosh, it's easier for me to just give this up than to have to fight with him every day to want to do it.
Is it also accurate to say he gave you a large share of the responsibility at home and with the girls?
All of it. Yeah. And well, I have a couple different perspectives on that. They always want your attention on them. So they're going to have a to-do list this long so that you're just going through the checklist and you're getting everything done that they need done. And that way you don't have time. You don't have time for yourself. That's one of the things. The other thing is them doing household chores or them doing the parenting doesn't really get them any attention. But them picking a fight or them calling names, that gets attention. They don't care if it's positive or negative attention, as long as it's attention. And this is confusing for people because on Tuesday, they're super nice and you have a great day. And we're like, oh my gosh, today was so good. Okay, the emotion they elicited there was happy. And where was our attention when things were going good? On them, right? So you think, oh, good, we're kind of in a lull. And then Wednesday, they get up and they're mad that the coffee doesn't taste good. And how can you load the dishwasher like that? And you're thinking, what did I do between the time I went to bed last night and got up that this different personality is here? Well, where is your attention when they're calling you names and hollering about the dishwasher and mad about things? Once again, your attention is on them.
Are most of the women that you work with, are they out of the relationship or are some of them still in the relationship?
Actually, I should mention, I have a ton of men that come to me also.
Okay, good to know, because I have a lot of clients who come to me who have narcissistic wives. It looks different. It's a different dynamic, but it does happen. And these men are wounded.
I think the thing that holds men back is because as soon as they hear abusive relationship and they're a male, that is very shameful to them. So for them to step forward and ask for help or start doing research, they're like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I've been in an abusive marriage and I'm the masculine end of this. And I think because I do a lot of one-on-one, it's easy for men to approach me. But back to your original question, I have people in every single stage, all the way through. And I don't necessarily advertise that I do this, but I also create exit strategies for people.
You have to, that has to be part of the discussion. Because usually, if someone's in this relationship and they're trying to figure out what their options are, they'd like to save their marriage. That's their preference. They'd like to have a different marriage. And if not, then they need to figure out how they're going to exit and keep their family intact and pay their bills and protect their kids.
Yeah.
So, does it ever work? Are they ever able to change the dynamic to the point where a relationship that is toxic can become non-toxic?
Okay, this is kind of a loaded question. For me, because I'm not going to be the one that says, no, they'll never change and no, it can't ever change.
I'm just asking, in your personal experience, have you ever seen it?
No.
Because they come see me, but they don't see me every week,
Right. And I'll tell you why I think it is. I am so adamant on the education of what is actually going on that I'll have people call me and go, okay, Dr. Heidi, My kids are 13 and 14. Can you just teach me enough that I can stay here until they're 18? And then I'll figure out what to do. And yeah, I absolutely will do that, because I'm going to teach them the same thing I'm teaching somebody who's already gone, somebody who's just in it. And I will tell you, within 6 months, every single one of those people, after learning what I teach them, has filed for divorce.
Really?
Because they're so confused when they're in there, and they're so confused at what love is, because the toxic personality will tell you that they love you. And we hang on those words because they said that they loved us. And they have a really hard time watching the actions. They hang on the words and they don't watch the actions. And so as soon as I explain the little flow chart I was just talking about, I start having them observe. Okay, for the next week, I want everything they say and everything they do, I want you to ask yourself which one of those 4 things they're seeking, because ultimately it's for security in themselves. And I will get texts that they'll just go, you have got to be kidding me. This is so easy. And so once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand all of the manipulation that goes on, and again, there's certain, it's not like everybody is super, super toxic. There's a whole different scale. So
there's a spectrum.
So it just depends. But as soon as you understand what motivates their behavior, it becomes very clear what is actually going on. And once, almost every single time that this has happened, they have realized that this is unhealthy and I want something better than this, and they've moved on. I did have one lady, she went through my whole program. She I don't want to say she's elderly, but she was already retired. And they had a very difficult son. And she went through the whole program. And there was a lot of pension, and there was a lot of 401k stuff that was involved. She learned from what I taught her how to interact with him. So the dynamic of his behavior, she didn't allow it to affect her. Yeah. And she actually stayed, and she's functioning quite well. He was much more on the less extreme toxic than some, but she was one that was able to take what I taught her, apply it to, functioning within that household. And she has been able to do it. Yeah.
So that probably looks like creating a different life, not reacting to, you did the dishwasher. Well, then do it yourself.
Yeah. And I'll say what you do is they're emotionally abusive. You don't, the goal is to not give them what they need, meaning not give them the feeling of control, power, attention, and admiration. So you start pulling emotion out.
Yeah, you stop very difficult, emotionally manipulated, because we do have the ability to reject emotional manipulation.
And the other thing I should mention, I keep talking about toxic people. You need to know we all have toxic traits. We all have the ability to be toxic. It's when these traits are repetitive and they're used in a manipulative, cyclic fashion. Yeah. That's when you really need to start looking at the relationship closer.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, if your partner does not respect you, and if you do not feel respected, you have nothing, my opinion.
Yep.
That's not a relationship.
And, you asked me about some of the 21 character traits. Demanding respect is one of the character traits of the toxic person. They're going to demand that you respect them, but they're not going to show respect in return. And it baffles me that they think they can make you respect them by saying you will respect me. Yeah. It's just like the same thing. You can trust me. Okay. No, trust and respect are earned.
Right. I mean, that's a red flag right there. Don't tell me I can trust you. Now I know I can't.
Yes, and I, I'm seeing it from a different perspective now than what I was seeing it when I was in it. So when I have clients come to me, whatever stage they're in, I immediately have to put myself back where they were. So I remember what it was, what it was like. And I remember hearing things like after infidelity, his way of convincing me that things were better was he would just go, come on, you can trust me. I promise you can trust me. Okay. Like it probably didn't register to me at the time either, but I'd be like, okay, because I hung on the words so much because I just wanted it to be authentic. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I just trusted him because he said, you can trust me.
Wow.
But it's that mind, we are striving for them to accept us. They are never going to accept us because when they don't, that keeps our attention on them. But we just want acceptance and we don't want to feel rejected. And we just want to feel something so bad that we just keep pouring and pouring and pouring into it without even really realizing it.
Well, Dr. Heidi, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I appreciate all of your time. Can you tell me how long is the program? How long does the program take?
Actually, one of the things I make sure is I let the client decide because they already have so much stuff in their life that they're not controlling. And I can do a program however fast or whatever. People can pick how many sessions they get. I think the biggest thing that I do is, we have a call once a week to every 10 days with my private clients. Okay, that's all fine, but the emergencies don't happen at 2:00 on Tuesday afternoon when I'm on the phone. So my private clients actually have the ability to text me between calls. And the reason I do that is because I'm trying to teach them how to interact. I'm trying to teach them how to respond. So if they have something that's going on right now, I just got this co-parenting, for example.
Yeah.
I don't even say that co-parenting doesn't exist in a toxic divorce. It's literally you're each parenting. And so I do a ton of work with co-parenting, but they get a text, and because we're trained to respond or they're going to be mad, I need to teach them how to respond without emotion. So they'll send me the text and they'll say, how should I respond to this?
Yeah.
And it only takes a little bit, and by next month they already know what Dr. Heidi's going to say.
Right. So, I do the same thing with my clients because it's all exhibits and they're in the exact same situation. Yep. They're getting pushed and then they have to decide, do I defend myself? This is a lie. Do I have to set the record straight? Yeah. It's hard.
And it is hard. It's terribly hard. And, we all have support systems, but if your support system has not been in something that's emotionally abusive, they want to understand, but they don't. And so, when they've got Dr. Heidi in their back pocket, they at least don't feel like they're going through it by themselves. And I actually just did a podcast last week for you to send to your support system. I really tried to explain what it is you're living with so that they can be better supporters, because they like to say things like, well, why don't you just leave?
Right.
And
why can't you ignore that? Or why did you allow yourself to be triggered?
Yes. Or why don't you take care of yourself? I remember when people would say, well, if it's that bad, why don't you just leave? And I remember thinking, that is a great idea, because I haven't thought of that except every day for the last 12 years. Yeah. And so it's just teaching, because it's frustrating for the support systems too. Yes. We wear them completely out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not unlike a situation of domestic violence where a victim has a black eye and tells her support system she's being beaten, but she's not ready to leave. And the worst thing you can do as a support system is say, I'm not going to be around that couple anymore because you're isolating your victim. It's hard.
Yeah. And too, I always say this to all of my clients, because they've already got people telling them to leave. They already feel like they're disappointing people by not leaving. Yeah. You are not going to leave until you are ready to leave.
Right.
So in the meantime, let's get you educated, and let's education leads to understanding leads to power.
Right. So you can start to make healthy choices today, regardless of whether or not you're going to leave. You can start protecting yourself, investing in yourself, believing in yourself, working on yourself. That should not wait.
And so that's why I take people at any stage, because we can start at any stage doing that.
And okay, excuse me. I'll have to edit that out. I almost coughed. Okay, so where's your website? How can we find you?
Okay, so I actually have a podcast myself. It's called It's Not Normal, It's Toxic. And that's like yours. It's on all the major platforms. My website is coachingwithdrheidi.com. That's where you can find the toxicity profile analysis. And you can take it you don't have to book a session with me. You can get on and take it. And sometimes just reading those questions makes people go, oh, maybe I better look into this a little more. And then I also would like to mention, I have a support group on Facebook. It's a private group, and everyone in that support group is going through the exact same thing you're going through. So if you feel like you are the only one on the planet that is having a marriage like this, because we know from the outside, they look completely different than what they look like from the inside. And that support group is called Strength Within. But I know there's more than one strength within. So the cover photo is a white flower growing out of a gray rock.
White flower, gray rock. I'm joining. Can I join?
Yeah, you can join.
Wonderful.
And again, you know, people like to work with me on different levels, and I will accommodate whatever works for them, their schedule, their, you know, finance wise, we can work all of that out.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a fantastic podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, and rate the podcast. And as always, let us know if there are other types of topics that you would like to be covered. Definitely reach out to Dr. Heidi, take the test, and wherever you're at today, know that we believe in you and things will get better. You can take steps right now today to be in a better place. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Bye.